dropping experiment consists on making three different bases, each one with a different angle of elevation. The idea is to see how the angle and the height can affect the pattern of a drop. One base was of 56 degrees, another one of 45, and the last one of 70 degrees. Two drops will fall in each piece of paper, which will be placed on top of each base. As far as the height goes, there are only two measures taken into account, 50 centimeters and 1 meter. As for the procedure, the first step was to make the three different bases with balso. The second step was to place the paper sheets in each base. Each paper was marked with the height and the angle. The third step was to drop each drop from an angle of 90 degrees from the arm to the body. The fourth step was to measure the result that the drop made in each paper. And the last and fifth step was to analyze the drop based on the different angles on the papers and depending on the measures. Analyze how the height and the angle of the paper affects the pattern and the result. When blood is impacted, droplets are dispersed through the air. When these droplets strike a surface, the shape of the stain changes depending on the angle of impact, velocity, distance traveled, and the type of surface impact. Generally, the stain shape will vary from circular to elliptical, with tails or spines extending in the direction of travel. In the 70 degrees case, the stain is almost circular, yet the spines begin to be more prominent on the opposite side of the angle of impact. In the 56 degrees case, as the angle of impact becomes lower, the elongation of the stain becomes more visible, meaning it starts to become more oval than circular, and the spines and scallops are focused more on the opposite side of the angle of impact. In the 45 degrees case of the drop is a complete oval, and all the spines are facing toward the opposite side of the angle of impact. As far as the height goes, the difference is seen in how big or small the circumference of the stain will be. Since there is only a 50 centimeter difference between each measure, the difference is not very obvious.
Heat experiment. Introduction. The experiment will be about how the speed and strength of a heat can affect the dispersion of the blood, or in this case, ink. The idea is to hit a ball filled with different quantities of ink and with more speed, or less, and strength in order to see how it affects the blood pattern, as well as to see if it is possible to apply the same strength and speed multiple times. The principal objective of this experiment is to be on the analysis of the speed of the machete and how it affects the heat of the basketball and the ink inside. The methodology will go as follows. First, the wall or the piece of wood will be placed on the ground and the surrounding areas in order to stop ink from getting on the floor. Second, a ball will be grabbed and filled with whatever quantity of ink the group wants. Third, the ball will be placed on top of a support for it to stay still. Fourth, the machete will be grabbed and used to hit the ball with it. Then, the ink pattern will be analyzed. Fifth, steps 2 to 4 will be repeated as many times as wanted, each time with a different ink quantity. Last of all, sixth, each ink pattern will be analyzed and a conclusion will be made in terms of weight, splash pattern, and relationship between those. Can be said that the further you shoot the machete from towards the balloon, the more dispersion there will be. Also, the stronger that you bat the ball, the more dispersion there will be, such as distance that you throw the machete from or bat the ball uh, affect the dispersion as well. Obviously, the further, the more dispersion there is, or the more inflated that the balloon is, the more dispersion there will be as well. Machete hits the balloon, or the way the batter hits, the angle that the batter hits, or the place it hits, affect the dispersion as well. And validity, it can be said that the experiment wasn't valid nor reliable because we didn't do it enough times, and even if we did it enough times, we wouldn't get the same result every time, as you cannot get enough the same strength into different goals.
experiment consists in showing how the height can affect the dispersion pattern. The idea of the experiment was to fill two balloons with similar quantity of air and paint and drop them from different heights, one height being 2.10 meters and the other height being 1.75 meters, and then just comparing the different results in order to know how the height will affect the pattern. The methodology of the experiment was relatively easy. The first step was to grab two balloons and fill them each with the same quantity of paint. The second step was choosing the heights and making sure the balloons were dropped from these specific heights. The third step was to drop each balloon from their corresponding height. The fourth and last step was simply to compare and analyze the different patterns.
For this experiment, we got two different results on the impact that have the balloon with the paint. In the first one, the balloon was dropped with a height of 2.10 meters. The results that made that impact was perfect and the dispersion of it was very bigger. All the paint of the balloon was approximately in all over the paper. The analysis of the results was very interesting because in it the height and the velocity affect the reaction and the dispersion of the paint because it is more height and the impact will be more bigger, and the velocity also creates and increase the spikes. Also inside the balloon it it had more paint than water, so the results clearly see the color of the paint than the water.
As for the second balloon, which was dropped from a height of 1.75 meters, the result was very different, since this balloon contained more water than paint. This meant that when dropping it, the pattern would not be so clearly due to the lack of paint. This means that the patterns are actually not comparable because even though the first one is correct and it shows how height can expand the circumference and diameter of a pattern, the second one doesn't allow us to determine anything but the fact that it has a little bit of dispersion in it.